Chapter 5, Internal Evaluation. Now you've just looked into the future through your external impacts, and you've outlined a path on what you think is going to happen. Now it's time to look internally and decide if you're positioned well from an internal perspective to succeed in the future. So this is about linking your internal evaluation to your external impacts. So again, future, and then how are we positioned for the future. So we have a couple models in the internal evaluation that you can use that will help you decide whether or not you are positioned well for the future from an internal perspective. First, we have the C-BEST model, and that looks at things that you really can't see or touch in your organization. We call them intangible resources. So it looks at all of those things like your culture, your brand, your energy, your skills, your technology protection. So those are the things that you'll look at and say, hey, are these strengths or weaknesses relative to the future? And then we have a series of microsystem models. Now it's kind of a complicated name, microsystems, but really what it is it looks at the specific strategic focus areas in the strategy whiteboard, the first being customer and market, then your product, then your operations and your people, 4 strategic focus areas. And within that, there's kind of a system in each one. So we want to look at that process, those steps, those things that take place, and evaluate those on a strength or weaknesses basis. So if we can look at how we're going to build our strategy around those strategic focus areas, and then dive in and say, what are some things that take place in those areas, evaluate them on a strengths and weaknesses basis, then we'll have the foundation for building our strategy. Because what happens is, when we build our strategy, we go back and look at our external impacts, and then we look at our weaknesses and say, what weaknesses do we have that we need to overcome in order to succeed? And then what strengths are we going to leverage in order to drive us forward? So we want to evaluate everything that goes on inside the organization relative to the future, and then build strategies to make sure we fix the weaknesses and leverage the strengths. Now we also want to look at your core competencies, and here's where we identify what are the things inside your company that you're truly the best in your industry at? What are your core competencies? So that's as simple as just looking at your strengths and identifying which ones are really the most valuable, the best in class, and the things that are really hard to imitate. So those are the 3 components. So look at your strengths, and you can identify which of your strengths are really strong, are really strengths on steroids, so to speak, and those are your core competencies. Now you're going to use your core competencies later to develop a core competency statement. So make sure you go through this step, because you're going to come back to it just like everything else in the strategy whiteboard.